The first 6 verses of this chapter, Moses urges the people to remember to keep the commandments and reiterates the benefits of obeying them. He reminds them of the past, the 40 years of wandering, and all the hardships and obstacles which serve to test and train them for their future relationship with the Lord as possessors of the new land. He also reminds them how God sustained them and supplied all their necessities, including food, both spiritual and physical, and clothing, along with the way up to this point. Israel is at the verge of entering the promised land. Moses is preparing them for the final stage of the journey. He is reminding them again of their responsibility and obligation toward God and His law, and how they should live in order to reap the benefits of the land. Which brings us to our key verse for today, which reads, "But that is the time to be careful. Beware that in your plenty you do not forget the Lord your God and disobey His commands, regulations, and decrees that I am giving you today." Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 11. After describing in detail the richness of this good and productive land, Moses calls on the Israelites to enjoy the provision God has given them and remain thankful. Here we have the idea that there is nothing wrong with enjoying the natural things with which God has blessed us. It, therefore, annuls the fallacy that those who live according to the ordinance of the Lord should live joyless and unhappy lives. However, such enjoyment should be anchored on a continuous spirit of gratitude to the provider of all things. This is a prescription for the proper response of gratitude for the blessings God gives. However, a common response is forgetfulness and times of prosperity, which Moses warns against in the following verses. In verse 11, Moses comes out with a strong and stern warning against forgetting the Lord and what He has done for them. Moses' warning here is that it is possible to enjoy the blessings of the Lord and ignore God Himself by failing to obey His laws. Disobedience demonstrates a lack of love for the Lord. Continuing to warn against laxity in their reverence to God and pride due to the abundance of the land, Moses reminds them once more where they have come from and what made it possible for them to have these riches. Moses tells them that they should bear in mind that there would have been no prosperity if God had not brought them out of the land of Egypt and cared for them throughout their wandering in the wilderness for the 40 years. Instead of being prideful and claiming that they have achieved their prosperity through their own power, Moses cautions them to remember the Lord thy God, because He is the one that gives you power to acquire wealth. The word power is best translated as ability. Hence, Israel is to remember that the Lord alone gave them the ability to acquire wealth. Moreover, whatever wealth they enjoy is the result of His covenant with their forefathers, in keeping with His character of faithfulness. The lesson here is that God gives power and ability to get wealth, and so wealth in itself is not sin. It becomes sin when it is used contrary to the will and law of the Lord, or when it is acquired by foul or illegal means. It also becomes sinful when we occupy our hearts and minds with our wealth rather than the Lord and His law, and when we worship the wealth instead of the giver of all wealth. In verses 19 and 20, these serve as the climax of the chapter and reinforce the thrust of the whole passage, warning against apostasy and rejection of the Lord as the true God. Here, especially in verse 19, Moses precisely defines what it means to forget the Lord, and that is to walk after other gods and serve them and worship them, which, in short, is disobeying of the first commandment. God's warning is clear and precise. Either they follow the Lord totally and live, or follow the other gods of the land and perish. Despite this chilling warning and threat, the sin of idolatry unfortunately plagued the children of Israel throughout their history, especially throughout the time of the judges, and often led to their servitude and exile. Through His grace, God has given us a way of escape through His Son, Jesus Christ. All that we need is to believe in Him, and we shall be saved.